How you doing? My name is Mark Vermillion, and I'll be teaching Sport Management 802 Ethics in Sport. And what I wanted to do was just provide a small overview or introduction. Think of this as kind of the first night where I'm just able to briefly introduce not only myself but also the course. Who am I? Well, I've been in the department for a couple of years now, and I deal with that other aspect of sport that is labeled the socio-cultural dimension. Essentially, I'm dealing with sociology, psychology, but also this idea of ethics. And one of these basic ideas that we're going to keep coming back to all semester is this notion of values. Well, what constitutes a value? A value is defined as something that is desirable, correct, and good. Well, who decides and who defines what constitutes a value? Well, it's going to be society. So all the ideas and things that I deal with are kind of in this particular milieu. My graduate degrees are in sociology, my undergraduate degrees in history, and what I hope I can bring to not only this class but also the department is just simply a different way of interacting with this institution of sport, recreation, and physical activity. Now, one of the things that's kind of interesting is that this is a required course for our graduate program here in the Sport Management Department. However, it is also a very, very popular elective course for a variety of other different programs across campus. So, one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to integrate people that may or may not have been exposed to these particular ideas. My disclaimer, don't freak out. Don't worry. If you've never had an ethics course, I'm starting from square one, and I'm assuming that nobody is necessarily an expert in this stuff, and so we're going to start building those basic blocks and putting together the foundation for examining some of these moral-based or ethical dilemmas and conflicts within the world of sport. One of the things that we're proud of here in the Department of Sport Management is our association with COSMA, the Commission on Sport Management Accreditation. And one of the things that you'll notice about the COSMA accrediting process is that it's been mandated that ethics be a course that's taught. So, that leads us to this whole idea of why. Why do we have to understand ethics? If ethics are so amorphous and nothing's black and white and everything's always gray, then why do we need to examine this particular institution? Well, if you think of sport management as the nice amalgamation of physical activity and business methodologies, well, a lot of business programs, all business programs that I know of across the United States and the world, have some sort of business ethics course. And so when you're dealing with programs, constituents, services, we need to make sure that we're doing things correctly. Well, how do we go about separating your opinion from my opinion and then deciding which opinion is better? Well, we can't necessarily do that unless we have some sort of clearly articulated framework that we can apply to every particular issue or dilemma. Then, through the application of this framework, we're able to understand better what's going on in this situation and then hopefully make the appropriate decision. When you start looking at ethics and how it's been applied to sport, one of the things that you'll notice is that sport ethics is just part of a larger self-reflexive process that people and organizations within the institution of sport have decided is very important. The process of self-reflexivity is exactly what it sounds like. You're able to step back, divorce yourself from your preconceived notions, and actually look at what's going on around you. Being reflective is a very, very important process for identifying the problems and issues, and then hopefully moving not only ourselves, our personal career, but also the organizations in which we're involved with, and then eventually, in some form, this entire institution forward. I'm assuming that the vast majority of people involved with sport have a positive view of sport, and so there's this sense that we want to take ownership of this particular institution and help to examine it, and then eventually move it forward in some modicum of way. Well, how do we do this? Well, there's really no one right or wrong answer. So, we have to look at knowledge. Theoretically, the more knowledge you have regarding anything, I mean, don't think about ethics here, think about anything, the more knowledge you have, the more prepared you are for making whatever and implementing whatever changes are necessary. Well, think back to the old days when perhaps you had to take a philosophy class, maybe in your undergraduate, and think about Plato, right? The famous philosopher, right? Well, one of the things that Plato advocated for was knowledge, to know thyself. All right, well, what is knowledge? We can't develop knowledge unless we know what it is. And for Plato, knowledge was simply the intersection of truths, identified over here, and beliefs. All right, well, if truths are akin to some sort of fact or known, rational, and deductively based answer in society, then we're very used to that. We know what truths are. Okay? Well, what is this idea of belief? Well, we all have preconceived notions, we all have biases, and we also have to be open to understanding whatever truth is out there. If you're able to do that, then that is how knowledge is going to be built. And then once you have knowledge being built, it's this sort of landslide process, and knowledge leads to knowledge and leads to growth and exploration, so on and so forth. Well, getting back to that idea, and we just spoke about believing and being open to those answers. And one thing that's going to be very important for not only all the ideas that I deal with, but especially within the world of ethics, is this notion of critical thinking. And a lot of people have, critical thinking is one of those buzz phrases that we get very tired of hearing about. And one of the things I really want to make sure that everyone knows is that critical thinking does not mean you're being negative. Critical in this sense does not mean something negative. We want to have those critical thinking skills where you look at something on the surface, but you have the ability through a variety of different tools to dive underneath the surface and not just take things for granted. Sport, in and of itself, in all its complexities, is a very, very convoluted thing. It's complex. There's no really one straight road. All right, we know that. Therefore, the questions that we ask pertaining to this very, very complicated institution are probably going to be in and of itself very complicated. As a result, the answers that we're going to generate should be very complicated. Well, but that process is very difficult, and oftentimes we want to kind of take the easy road and fall back on some easy, lazy stereotypes. Well, that's one of the things that we want to avoid within this. And if you look at some of the core aspects of critical thinking, these are the skills that we want to develop. Okay, analysis, being able to sit down and look at all the information. Well, once you have all that information, if you kind of think of this as one large circle of knowledge, all right, then once you have the analysis, you're able to come up with some sort of inference. You're able to come up with a core abstract idea that you can apply to a lot of different situations. And one of the things is, we're going to talk a lot about abstract things in this particular class, and it can be frustrating for students, but here's the reason why we do that. If you start in the abstraction and you come up with an example that deductively helps to illustrate that particular abstract concept, that is going to be more useful than if we come up with something that's very, very narrowly focused. All right? If you come up with an answer to a particular situation, well, if that answer is very, very narrowly focused and only applies to that particular situation, yes, you've solved that particular situation. But now you have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to making a similar decision in the future. Okay, well, all of these different things, and the thing that sort of separates critical thinking skills from a lot of other skill sets kind of is down here in this whole idea of self-regulation and evaluation. Again, that's that whole self-reflexivity that we talked about, being able to divorce yourself from the situation and look at things for what they really are. Well, that's a very, very abstract phrase. What does that mean, looking at something for what it really is? All right, how do we do that? Well, if we go back to Plato's conception of knowledge, you have truth and belief, and as those things intersect, then we're able to start digging deeper. And if you combine that with these core critical thinking skills, then we're starting to lay the foundation and get into some things that can be very, very useful in terms of trying to muck our way through this jungle that is sport. Because if you look at saying, okay, sport, a positive or negative influence on people, that's a pretty simple question for a very, very complicated institution. Youth sport, professional sport, college sport, high school sport, recreational sport. So what we want to do is kind of strip away those easy answers and let's start really getting down to the heart of the matter. Okay, well, we're going to start getting down to the heart of the matter. Where do we go from here? I don't know. That's the issue. There's no one way. If you look at all that, I love this picture over here because it's kind of like, okay, you can't go this way, you can't go this way, you can't go backwards, you can't go forward. Okay, this is just a convoluted mess over here. Where do we go? We have some ideas, we have topics, but what we really need is a trail that's being blazed. We need something, a path that's open to us. That's what ethics is. It's a branch of philosophy that just provides a framework, a way for looking at and understanding this particular material. That's what we need. That's what we're looking for. I'm not saying ethics is necessarily the perfect lens or framework for looking at and understanding these issues. It's just one way to do it. And it's the way that we're going to do it in this particular class. The beautiful thing about ethics is that you are able to easily integrate and amalgamate all your worldviews and life experiences into these frameworks that we then can apply to issues within sport. Okay, we're going to start under this basic supposition that you have an opinion as individuals, I have an opinion, all right, and if we have deductively put together a justification or rationalization for our opinion, then your opinion is no better or worse than mine. And that's what ethics allows us to do, is understand the development of these opinions, understand how these opinions, these ideas, these morals, these values impact decision making within this institution of sport. One of the reasons that you all are coming back and getting this master's degree, whether you're in the sport management program or not, is you want to ascend within your organization, some sort of leadership position, all right, which means you're going to be synthesizing abstract ideas, bullet pointing them, and disseminating these ideas in some consumptive-based way to your employees. Right? You're also going to be asked to lead these individuals and evaluate all the myriad of dynamics that are occurring within this particular institution. This class is just providing one set of tools that you can do that. Many other classes provide many other sets of tools and skills that we can do that, and hopefully at the end of whatever program you're involved with, you're able to amalgamate all these different things together and develop the best practice that is going to be appropriate for you and your organization. This doesn't have to be a hard class. We have some jargon, we have some nomenclature that we have to get through, but we're going to talk about these things, we're going to explicate them, we're going to use assignments, we're going to try to get out there and like I said before, kind of muck around with these ideas, and that sort of quote-unquote doing allows us to hopefully humanize some of these very abstract ideas. So, I guess from here we're going to move on. If you notice, the class is divided up into a couple different sections. We will get to those sections in due time. Thank you very much, and I look forward to working our way through this particular semester.